Alrighty, good morning, everyone. Welcome to DeviceAlliance's Young Professionals second workshop series of 2021. So, super excited for our career development program pilot. And so, my name is Joanne. I chair the Young Professionals Committee with DeviceAlliance. DeviceAlliance is the largest nonprofit organization here in the Orange County area dedicated to supporting the vitality and ecosystem of the medtech device industry, specifically to SoCal. And our mission in the YPC, the Young Professionals Committee, is to train and elevate our next generation of medtech leaders. So I'm excited that this is part one of three workshop series. And today we'll be exploring predominantly leadership and management for young professionals. But just to give you guys a heads up, we also do have two other workshops, and that includes our next weekend, next Saturday, November 6th, is our fundamentals of personal finance. So if you're looking to get one-on-one consulting as well as just learning some more about how to be financially stable in the future and start planning towards that, building your investment and just being more money savvy, please join us then as well. And then we also have one more workshop in this series, which is navigating difficult conversations. So this might be anything that has to do with personal life, but also work life, where you are working with someone who you're not communicating well with, or you need some extra support in terms of how do I approach this conversation that feels very uncomfortable to me. And that might be asking for a promotion, conflict mediation, quitting a job, and so much more. So I hope you will join us at those. And so today we are very lucky and absolutely delighted to have Manisha back with us for another workshop. And it's my pleasure to work with her throughout this year as well as introduce her today. So Manisha Dalwin, she's the founder and CEO of Empath Coaching and is an executive coach, career strategist, and design thinking expert. She has over 2 decades of experience as a strategic partner to her clients. She has led global transformation and change management initiatives across several industries. In a past life, she started her career in her family business in applied membranes, where she sort of had the opportunity to innovate and work in almost every function there. And she spent years managing and consulting at PwC, Deloitte, and leading digital innovation and advisory programs across healthcare, entertainment, professional services, and technology. She spent 5 years at Taco Bell with their incubator team, where she was responsible for reimagining the customer experience, launching disruptive products, and scaling the digital footprint across 7,000 restaurants. So Manisha has helped hundreds of professionals successfully pivot their careers and land the roles and careers that they're looking for and they want and desire. She believes that we all have the unlimited potential, and we can break through limiting beliefs and reinvent yourselves. And that's something that I absolutely love and adore with working with Manisha. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Manisha. Thank you so much for your time today.
Wow, thank you, Joanne. What a wonderful introduction. I appreciate it. And so good to see all of you. I know it's Saturday and what a difficult time to get on camera, right? I know. So, but if you'd love to join us on camera, that would be fantastic. I'd love to see your faces. No judgment at all if you have your hair in a messy bun or, oh, love it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Adriana, am I saying your name right? It's Adriana? Adriana?
Sorry?
How do you say your name?
Adriana, yeah.
Adriana. Okay, nice to see you. Amod, Gabriel, good to see you again. Okay, wonderful. So feel free to chime in. I want this to be interactive. I encourage participation. I want you guys to get out of it whatever it is you need. So if if there's burning questions that you have as we go through the presentation, feel free to jump in because again, as Joanne mentioned, I'm really here to help support you and the DeviceAlliance community. So with that, I'm going to start to share my screen. And while I'm getting that set up, Joanne, if you don't mind throwing up the first poll, actually the poll that we have today, just to get a sense of where everyone is on their career journey, how much years of work experience you have, and management experience. I think we've got a variety of experience in the room. And what do you think is the hardest part about being a manager, even if you haven't had management experience? What do you predict could be one of the most challenging things for you? All right. Everyone is good to go. Joanne, do you want to show the results? Close the poll when you get a sec.
They're still updating. I think
Oh,
they're
that's okay.
realizing, yeah. Okay, I think
No
they've
worries.
stabilized.
Everyone
All
understood.
right, I'm gonna end the poll now.
I saw the poll pop up on my screen too, so it's going to be skewed because I answered it as well. Okay, so we've got pretty even split across some of these. About 1 to 3, 3 plus, 0 to 1. And years of experience, and then management experience. Okay, so pretty much most of you have had some experience. 0 to 1, I know that's kind of a big range, so it could be a couple months in there or not at all. And communication, giving feedback, managing conflict, developing others. Wonderful, awesome. Does anyone want to unmute and share what their response was and why you thought that would be a difficult, and don't get me wrong, all of these can be challenging, but maybe your perspective?
I see Enrique has his hand up.
Enrique?
Yes. So I chose communication, and the reason for that is because it's a two-way street. It's, and additionally, not only that, but everyone has their own preferred form of communication. So if you do your like DISC assessment, you understand that, someone likes something super blunt and to the point, and you're giving them the big runaround and all the information. It's like, come on, let's get to it now. So definitely understanding as a manager your team and how they like to be communicated with, and how they can best communicate with you. That's what I find really the most challenging.
That is a great point, Enrique. And you brought up DISC, and that's a great assessment tool to understand people's interaction styles or communication style. And as you mentioned, some people may be more direct and, decisive. And if somebody with a different personality that's more, chatty or wants to socialize or, do some small talk meets that person, you kind of need to meet people where they are and form a bridge of communication to really land what your message. And so that can be challenging to do, is to understand people's communication styles and then how to adapt your style to the situation. So awesome. All right. Okay. So let's get started. All right. So we're going to talk about, a lot of you have management experience, but even as you transition to manager, or even senior manager, as you move up the ranks, what does that look like? What are some pitfalls and challenges? And some lessons that I've learned along my journey, as well as some skills and tools you can take back with you. A lot of this does have to do with kind of time management, prioritization, and we'll practice and do some, opportunities to communicate things like feedback. Of course, always jump in whenever there's Q&A. We will save time at the end as well. And I know some of you have met me, but for those who haven't, Joanne did a great job of introducing myself. But feel free to connect with me. I'd love to, stay connected and hear about how your journey progresses. So that's me in a nutshell. And first of all, let's say you've been given a promotion, or you've had to backfill your manager if they're on leave, or suddenly somebody leaves and they said, you're in charge now. Congratulations, right? That's exciting. You've been promoted to a manager. I mean, that's something to celebrate. Well, we know that 60% of new managers actually fail in the first 24 months of the new position. So not to be giving you daunting statistics out of the gate, but also 70% of people leave because of their manager. And that's not because people intentionally are trying to drive their team away or purposely fall flat on their face. It's just such a big transition. And it's a mindset shift, as well as just thinking about how you're going to show up differently. And, there's challenges because sometimes you may not have the right support. In fact, we know that new managers often fail for several reasons. These are the top 4 that have been identified through various surveys, but there's a lot of other reasons. One is just lack of recognition of employees. Maybe they're just so busy and immersed in their own work, they forget to say thank you to their people. Or, Enrique, you alluded to this too. Maybe you just don't understand the other person's communication style, but also what their recognition needs are, whether they prefer to be recognized in private or in public. Also providing clear directions. I've worked with, I remember a partner at Deloitte who was very vague, and he said, and I think part of it was because he didn't even know what he wanted. He just said, go figure it out. And so there were times where I thought I was figuring it out, and I came back and I was totally off base. So I had to get clever and savvy and almost get ahead of him and say, okay, these are my 4 options. Here's what I've thought through. Here are my assumptions. Am I on the right track? So even if, you as a leader might not be providing us clear directions, is there a way you can step aside and coach your team to ask you those questions so that you can think through it with them and partner with them? So think about how you provide directions as well as setting up time to meet with your employees and using that time wisely. We're going to talk about how to structure a one-on-one. And if you guys, those of you that have had managerial experience, maybe you can share some of your insights and what you found to be most productive. But, I've heard from people that they say, I just had a one-on-one with my manager and we talked about our weekend and we, had a fun conversation, but I still don't really know what I'm supposed to be responsible for the week. And then something really difficult is providing that feedback. So how many of you had to provide feedback before? And what was that like? Joanne, I saw you raise your hand. Do you want to share?
Yeah, it's difficult because I'm a people-pleasing personality and I don't want to hurt anyone's like feelings. So the best way that I approach this is one, you want to give the feedback as soon as possible in terms of something that you notice. And then two, the method that I use is sort of a sandwiching method where it's a positive compliment or comment, and then your actual criticism or thing that they could improve on, and the way that you phrase that is very important. And then lastly, to wrap up with like, yes, you need to work on that, but there are other things that you're doing fantastic on, and just give them sort of that cushioning.
Yeah, that's a great method, the sandwich method, to keep it positive, keep it on a high note. Also, we mentioned timely feedback, giving feedback in the moment, not months later, because people may have forgotten and it's harder to act upon something that is not happening in the moment. And then being, there's a few other tips and we'll talk about that as we go, but being solutions oriented, even inviting the other person in and asking permission, would you mind if I share some thoughts with you? How do you think the presentation went? Or how do you think the meeting went? And see if they can also do a self-assessment and give some honest feedback on, how they felt that they did. And that can just continue to encourage self-awareness and create that safe space to talk about that, to have that dialogue. And then you can also chime in and say, yeah, that's great. Here's some things that I observed, but, let's work on that. How do we want to improve that? And coming up with an actionable plan so that down the road you can actually follow up and follow through and say, based on the feedback I gave a couple months ago, here's the progress that we've seen, or here's, further development needed. So, okay, awesome. But it's still challenging, right? Especially if you are a people pleaser, like, Joanne mentioned, and that's very normal. And a lot of us are that, or we don't want to hurt someone's feelings, or we feel bad, or we don't want people to leave us as we're a leader, and to give that feedback might be challenging. But a lot of employees have said in surveys that they didn't feel like they were actually getting enough feedback, and that was hindering them from really developing and understanding how to grow. So remember the benefits of giving that feedback too. And then just a couple more statistics. I don't know if you guys are currently working right now. I'd love to hear from you, but a lot of Fortune 1000 companies are great at this. They invest in leadership development, but maybe startups or smaller companies might not necessarily prioritize this. But across the board, 60% of millennials are feeling they're not being invested in and they're not getting their skills developed. And even if there is development, it's not happening at all levels or consistently across the organization. So sometimes it's reserved for executives. They have an executive development, or these high performance individuals, or maybe even for people that need performance management attention because they're not performing. But wouldn't it be great if it was consistent across the organization and every time you leveled up, you had some sort of development? But I think it's fantastic that you guys are taking advantage of this resource here with DeviceAlliance. And anything else that you're doing to continue and further your personal and professional development, rather than relying on the company that you're with to do that for you all the time, right? Okay, so I'm going to make sure you're all with us. So I see Piyashi, that's a beautiful name. Am I saying that right? So tell me a little bit about where you are in your career journey and what comes to mind so far as we're talking through this.
So I'm actually a PhD student, so I'm actually in Joanne's department. So she was kind enough to invite me to this. I just started my third year of PhD, and I don't have management experience as such in like the professional terms, but I feel like I'm always, leading undergrads or even like my team when it comes to different projects, different experiments and things like that. I think in my experience, especially because the project is like I like it's not an official thing where undergrads have an official position or official like work to do. So it's up to us how we delegate work. So most of the time it goes well, but often I feel like it takes time for me to train them. So I'll probably take over and just do the work. I know that that's not really something that's going to transfer when I go into the industry. So I think that's something I'm looking into, like how to delegate work and also conflicts. I think that's another thing that I feel is challenging. I am a person who likes to avoid conflicts in general. Like I'll also be the person who says sorry first because I just don't want to deal with it. But I think that's something that I really need to work on, how to avoid conflicts. So.
Wow, thank you for sharing that, Piyashi. I know it's hard to be fully honest and vulnerable in especially on a group setting, but that's amazing. And it's very common too. First of all, I love the distinction, and I think we should talk about that too, between leadership and management. And in the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to use both of those terms interchangeably. But I honestly think anyone and everyone is a leader and can be a leader. And management is kind of, I guess, the title or the formal, I'm project manager, I'm manager XYZ that you might get. But it really is just exercise. In both of those cases, you're going to need certain skill sets. How to delegate, that can be challenging, right? Because it might be faster or easier for you to just do it yourself than to sit and take the time and train someone to do it. So we're going to talk about delegating too. And I'll give you, sneak preview on that. But the key is when in delegating is to think about who, what, and why you're delegating. So who do you want to delegate to? What are you delegating to them? Sometimes we delegate things that maybe are not, are small, maybe small tasks, and that's okay to start with. But if you look at the underlying why, is it to ultimately develop that person, to maybe have them as your right-hand person, to free up your time to do other more strategic work? And so think about, as you're delegating, what does that open up the space for you to be able to do? And that upfront investment, yes, it's, obviously it will take time to train that person and go back and forth, and that can be cumbersome, but there's, maybe perhaps longer term benefits. So it's balancing out and really assessing, based on your priority and your workload, you might have to start thinking about delegating certain things. And it's about building that trust, right? If somebody can show you that they're responsible, reliable, and they're learning and picking up things quickly, then you start to build that trust over time and you feel more comfortable delegating. So very typical challenge with leadership, conflict management as well, wanting to kind of say sorry or push past the conflict. And actually, a lot of times conflict can be healthy and productive on teams. It can encourage us to challenge the status quo, to innovate, to come up with new ideas, but it can be uncomfortable and challenging, especially if the conflict gets escalated. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But thank you for sharing those points. That's excellent. And so I'd love to hear you guys chime in too. Maybe even you can just throw your opinions in the chat as well. What do you think the difference is if you're doing an individual contributor, you're working on your stuff, and now you're stepping into a manager role? What have you seen to be the biggest differences, or you think would be the biggest differences? And if you can unmute or you can put in the chat, I'll look at the chat as well. And I might call on a few of you too, so that should be fun. Let's see. How about Rudy? See if Rudy is with us this morning.
Yes,
there you are.
Good morning.
Good morning, Rudy. How are you?
Good, wonderful. So in my personal opinion, I believe that sometimes when you become a manager while you're like previously working on another position, is that sometimes you have to delegate some tasks to people who are older than you are. So sometimes they don't like to have a boss who's younger than they are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So sometimes that is really challenging.
Rudy, I think you have a crystal ball. I have a slide coming up on just that topic. This is true. When you become a manager, you might be managing people that are older than you that are more experienced than you or think they're more experienced than you. And, they might feel resentful that you're now their manager. And that's happened to me throughout my career. And it was a challenging, the transition period was tough. For me, it was about building the credibility and also setting up the relationship that, I know it can be uncomfortable and that I'm going to be, managing you and developing you in your career and helping to lead the team, but also then recognizing them and saying, I know you bring so much experience to the table and I really value and appreciate that. So oftentimes people feel like they might be left behind or slighted. And if you can let them know that they're appreciated, that can at least help to start to, bridge any gaps in terms of misunderstandings, as well as just set up the relationship on a positive note. And it could potentially take time. But yeah, so other things between individual contributor and manager is when you're an individual contributor, you're managing yourself and your own workload. You're delivering awesome work. Maybe you're, an expert in your craft. You're communicating with others, collaborating, and you're in charge of a process, project, or deliverable. And when you become a manager, it now transitions from this I am doing to like we are doing. And you might have to structure, facilitate, and plan the work of others in addition to your own work. So you've just added more to your plate, which is all the more reason why it starts to become more important to think about how to delegate. And I think the key there too is to really start to understand your team members' strengths. What are they really good at? And then what are their goals and ambitions? What do they want to do? And is there a way to line up the work with their ambitions and their strengths? Meeting with them one-on-one and really getting to know them, because you're going to set this tone and structure for the team and kind of the culture, the subculture within the organization. So, you're going to have the opportunity to make larger decisions, which can be challenging. So it's so important to have mentors and support system in your peer group, or in the organization, or even outside the organization. So you don't have to do it alone and feel like you're just going underwater. Again, knowing your team, providing those opportunities and thinking more strategically, and also really knowing your why. Why do you want to be a leader? Why do you want to be a manager? And you know what? I know some people that got promoted to manager and they didn't really like it. And that's perfectly okay. They went back to being really great at their craft, delivering awesome work, inventing stuff, creating patents. And they just didn't want to deal with the people side of management. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You might get thrown into a management role and may not have a choice, at least temporarily. So embrace it and welcome the opportunities and learning. But that doesn't mean you have to do it forever if it's not your cup of tea. But if it is, and as you think about leadership, why do you want to do it? Why do you want the promotion? Does anyone want to share like what they love about being a manager, what excites them, or why they would want to be one? And if you don't like it, you can share that too. Swati.
Hi, Manisha.
Hi, Swati. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. So tell us a little bit about where you are and what you think your why might be.
Yeah, so I'm a graduate student right now, and I've never had a opportunity to be in a managerial role. Mm-hmm. I like to do my individual work, and I've never seen myself as a manager.
Okay.
I don't know. It's just that I like to contribute my ideas, as we talked about that before, mm-hmm. more than trying to accommodate everybody's ideas in the future as a manager. So I might welcome the opportunity in the future, but I don't see myself as a manager.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. And that's exactly what we're talking about today is you don't have to necessarily want to do it. But if you do get in the position, thinking about, can you become a leader or are they born? If you were in a leadership position or stepping into one or started to delve into it, or even as an individual contributor, lead in a different way, maybe lead yourself or inspire other people in the lab or on your team or in your group. Tell me more about leadership. Do you guys think leaders are born or made? And this could be a good debate Gabriel, what do you think?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I think definitely leaders are made. Um, I'm not I'm not sure if you could actually prove whether you're born with a certain trait. But I feel like at least with leadership, it's kind of like a skill that you can learn. Um, and it's not a skill that you necessarily have to get a certificate for. You can lead for many different things, no matter how small. It could be as small as a group project in a class, or as huge as a meeting right now, with you, Manisha. And so I think there are environments where you can cultivate your leadership skills, and they can definitely be made.
Thank you for sharing. And that's a wonderful response. And that is actually true. You can learn these leadership skills, and you can be a leader of very small magnitude, a larger magnitude. It's really how you define it. Now, some people might be born with certain tendencies or desire to be a leader, where they step up in their team sports or in class at an early age, and they exhibit qualities and characteristics of a leader. But that's not to say that it can't be further refined and taught, and other people, introverts, any kind of personality really can step in and learn how to become a leader, even if it's uncomfortable and awkward at first. So I'll tell you a little story, and then Joanne, I think we're getting into our first breakout room, so we can maybe get into groups of 3. But okay, so I was promoted. The first thing I had to do was actually fire someone. And I was like, okay, this is not going to go over well, because I thought I would be like a well-liked leader. Everybody would love me. And now I'm going to have to really upset some people. But that was a responsibility given to me, and I had no idea how to do it. And I got a little bit of coaching through it, but ultimately I had to still go and do it on my own. And my heart was pounding through my chest. And the gentleman was older than me too. So you can imagine how awkward it was. And at that point, I had to learn how to keep it more factual based, control some of those emotions, and just say, and this team, or this organization didn't really have an HR department. So typically it would be channeled through something like that. But I had to say, we made a really difficult decision of letting it go. This was many, many years ago. I think nowadays they oftentimes do it a little bit differently, or they might have like a layoff where it's not just isolated to one person. But it was definitely challenging to do. And I was thrown into that, as well as another at Deloitte, my first project. Our manager actually had a stroke on site. She was under so much stress, and we're going to talk about stress management because leadership can be stressful. It was a high stakes project. We had a fixed price project, and the partner was up for partner that year. So she, I think, internalized a lot and didn't manage her stress well. She ended up having a stroke. And the partner came to me and said, "Now you're in charge." Now, at the time I said, why would I want someone's job when they almost, when they've almost passed from it? But I said, it's a really great opportunity. At the time, I was a little bit naive too. Looking back, I probably would have negotiated, a promotion or a raise, and I did not. But I thought, what a great opportunity. And I was just thrust and forced into this position. And that happened a lot in consulting, where you're just forced into these different projects and you have to figure it out. And so you just, number one, not really fake it till you make it, but channel all your strengths within you, get support, and develop those skills. So just a few interesting stories there. Now, Joanne, if you don't mind putting people in the breakout rooms, I want you guys to talk in just a couple minutes and then come back and share what is a good leader versus a bad leader, and just a few characteristics and qualities of each. And we'll just do that for a couple minutes in groups of 3. A couple shares from the group. Let's see. Who has not? Alexa.
One of the things we went over for a good leader was not just giving feedback, but also receiving feedback, and then being good at listening as well. Yeah.
I love that. Giving and receiving feedback, right? Because you're not a superhero. You're not immune to developing yourself. So being open-minded as well as listening. Anyone else want to share good or bad characteristics or experiences you've had with either of them? Listening came up a lot. We talked about that as well in our group. Confidence, inspiring, and not trying to get people around the problem and build confidence versus, oh my gosh, we have a problem. What are we going to do? Cool. Okay, so we will move on. We've got a lot more to cover. Let's talk about a couple leaders that, you may be familiar with, and even in your own life. We're not going to call out anyone's names, but Steve Jobs, we will. So what do you guys think about Steve Jobs? What kind of a leader do you think he is, or was, I should say? Amod, any thoughts from you?
I'm not sure. I actually don't know too much about how he ran the company necessarily.
Okay.
I just from what I've heard, my best guess is he definitely had a vision, I think, for the company, given that, like, he came in, or, he sort of founded Apple with that, like, from the ground up. And I think to do that, you need to sort of be able to understand what your goals are and try to bring, like, other people to see that same goal as well, so they can be committed towards working towards that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Very visionary. He came into Apple and he kind of disrupted it. Extremely innovative, creative, forward thinking. I don't know if you may or may not know the story, but he got fired from Apple and then came back and reinvigorated. Joanne, you've got your hand up. Anything you'd like to share?
I read part of his biography. I haven't finished because this is a thick book, but he was quite an authoritarian type of leader. He put down a lot of people for this greater, in quotes, good from a vision perspective. He was very very sharp around the edges as a leader. Let me put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Anyone else want to share? So yeah, very, very dynamic, inventive, visionary, but there's a dark side to it, right? So the flip side of it is he was often cited as the smartest person in the room. So very, very high IQ, but very low EQ, emotional intelligence, driving people too hard, perfectionist, defensive, inflexible, lack of impulse control, abrasive. And so even despite the fact that he was so successful and so revered, and even now is a legend in terms of leadership, think about the legacy you want to leave behind and to what extent and what cost you want to lead. And again, balancing, you may have very, very high IQ, but how do you also become an even better leader through your emotional intelligence and through really, really understanding people? Not everyone's going to be able to do that. So he had his legacy. What is yours going to be? Okay, so we talked a lot about great leaders. I want to share with you a lot of what's coming up and what's important. And you've mentioned some of this. Listening is huge, right? We've talked about being transparent, but you can still be innovative, but also a great listener. Humility, being humble, and inclusive. Nowadays, especially, we're going to talk about priorities for leaders, but how do you really be inclusive and think about people from different cultures and backgrounds and have that sensitivity and that foresight to really bring people to the table, and actually drives innovation, being curious and wanting to learn more and not being set and rigid and thinking that you know it all. You're not supposed to be a superhero and, be flawless. It's okay to actually come and approach people and say, and I've done this too with some of my team members. And especially when I first started, I was very much a perfectionist and I had very high standards and expectations from my team because it was a reflection of me and my work. And over time, after working with so many people, I realized I was going to drive myself crazy if I kept that mindset, because there's so many different levels and skill sets and strengths and abilities. And not everyone was going to meet my expectations. And I started to notice that in the way I led people, that it was starting to be demotivating, actually. And so I started to kind of temper my expectations and really, again, tap into their strengths and also come to them and be very humble and vulnerable and say, I understand I may be difficult at times with the level of expectations I'm setting. And here's why. So help me understand, where you can really add value and contribute to the team in a way that's going to bring your skills to light. Because again, you want to be fair. Another thing too is sharing the spotlight is huge. I've had many leaders where we as a team developed something and we launched a product and it was a huge win. And it's time for the award and the accolades, and they get up on stage and take the award and don't even recognize the team. And imagine how that feels, right? So after that, it's like, well, I don't really want to work that hard for this leader because, what kind of recognition am I getting? So if you share the spotlight, you can bring people along and build loyalty, and it's just more fun, right? Anything else? Any other thoughts that come up? Okay, so managing is a lot. You're not just going to be managing your direct reports. You're going to be managing your peers across the organization. You're going to be managing your own stress. You're going to be managing change as it comes up. You're going to be managing expectations and what they call managing up, which means really just clarifying and setting expectations with your boss so that you're aligned and in sync and know what's expected of you and your team. And oftentimes when you're in the middle of this, cross section, you might have to shield some of that for your team, right? There may be certain things coming down your way, and you need to be transparent to a point where it's appropriate, but sometimes you might need to protect your team from really understanding that there could be some really big changes ahead, and how do you distribute that information in a way that is digestible? Okay, so we talked about this, right? Older than you, more experienced than you, a peer, worked with you before, maybe even used to be your boss. I've seen that. That can be awkward. And a friend. And so what do you guys think? What would you do in that situation? Any of these situations? Kind of talked about it a little bit. Which of these kind of makes you the most nervous?
I think personally, probably used to be your boss. Feels like it would be the biggest change just because the other ones, like, them before, but like in terms of used to be your boss, like it's actually just like a reversal of the roles there used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Kiyashi?
Yeah, I think even a friend is pretty tough. I would say, like, separating your friendship from the role that you have to play. I think for me, both a friend and used to be a boss would be difficult, but a friend would be slightly more difficult because I would have a tougher time, like, yeah, being professional, I guess, or maintaining the professionalism and, managing them. I would have a tough time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in my many years of experience, and you may get there too, you'll probably experience all of this. So I can share with you what happened in my case. Best friends, we were tied together. We were on the same team. We would go to dinner. It was at Deloitte. So we were traveling every week to Phoenix, and she would come from Dallas. I would come from California. And we would always be so excited to see each other, catch up and have dinner, every meal together. And then that was the same project where the senior manager had to take a medical leave of absence for her stroke. And now I was her boss. And it was awkward and uncomfortable. And the friendship did change, but not necessarily for the worse. It was just, hey, I can't be that way with you anymore. I can't show favoritism because now there's other people on the team. I need to spend equal time with them. I think we should kind of set some boundaries between, and a good friend should understand. Now that doesn't mean they'll like it, right? Or that you will like it. But how do you shift it? So now I'm also managing her performance. I'm responsible for reviewing her and deciding if she gets promoted or not, right? And giving her feedback. So it took a few weeks. It took a few weeks to sit there and say, I still want the friendship, but I think the dynamic has to shift where respect is actually, I won't say more important, but extremely important, more than just the friendship, right? How does she respect and see me as a leader? And then, but initially when I tried to get her to do something, she'd say, oh, come on, let's go to dinner, you know, let's go complain about, about work. And I had to set those boundaries and say, okay, you know, this is as much as I can do. Why don't we go to dinner as a team? Why don't we set up a one-on-one, make it more formal if you have some complaints or some issues to address, and let's like talk it through. But yeah, shifting and resetting the relationship can be hard, but ultimately you're setting the foundation, right? You're laying down new bricks, you're coming up with strategies to be seen as a leader, and people are looking at you, right? You're in a high visibility role now. People are going to assess your leadership abilities, and the rest of the team is also going to see. And I've worked for leaders where there was blatant favoritism. It does not feel good at all. And you feel like you're never going to win this person's validation or approval. And ultimately you kind of accept that anyway. You're not looking for that externally outside yourself after a certain point. But when you see that level of favoritism, it definitely builds conflict between the two team members as well, and just changes the whole culture and dynamic of the team. So as a leader, you always have to be mindful and watching everybody and their behaviors and their reactions. So mindset is a huge shift, as I talked about. When you step into leadership, it's not just about the things you're physically doing, but about what's going on internally in that dialogue. And we're going to talk about like the confidence or lack thereof or self-doubt, but different mindsets too, growth mindset versus fixed mindset. In a fixed mindset, it's, you know, I'm just not good at it. I can't do this. My abilities are not changing, not changeable. My potential is so much. I'm frustrated. I stick to what I know, and this is what I'm good at, and why rock the boat? But if shifting into a growth mindset, which can be challenging to do, but it's just about remaining curious and open and saying, even if I fail, let's reframe what failure is altogether. What is failure, really? And how much can failure actually be one of our best teachers and an opportunity to grow, to develop, giving yourself some room and space and grace to fall and grow and learn. Say, I don't have it all figured out. I'm not supposed to. And it's just going to help me. It's going to help me grow. It's going to help me become a better person. And that feedback is actually going to help me. And also understanding this abundance mindset too, that other people can have success. There's no shortage of success. So if your team members go on to other companies or leave, or they advance further than you, it's actually a sign that you were probably a good leader in some way, right? Or had a positive impact on them, but not that you're going to be stuck where you are. And how am I going to ever get promoted? And this person's growing past me. It's this idea that abundance is out there and there's enough success to go around. And if you believe in yourself and your abilities, you will find success, and redefine what it means for you. Again, it doesn't have to be this big title, you know, this big flashy role or company. It's finding that balance and what works for you. Okay, so more pitfalls and challenges. Does that sound like a fun place to step into?
We do have a comment from chat.
Yes.
From
the chat. Okay, yes. I think you said Chad. I was looking for Chad.
Chad.
Okay. Enrique, open communication. Okay, yeah, back on the foundation component. Open communication with that particular individual in the team that may be difficult to manage helps with success in the long run. Absolutely. So there's also, you know, sometimes when you get into a leadership role, there's like a leadership assimilation process where you might want to bring the team together and say, you know, I'm so excited to now be and humbled and honored to be leading this team. You know, I want to make this a two-way street. How can I help you? You know, if you have feedback for me, let's keep this open communication and this dialogue going. And so everyone kind of knows you're setting the stage and setting the foundation for the norms of the team, and that your door is open, that you can communicate. So if there's a difficult person, a difficult member on the team, you've at least opened the door to them and invited them in and said, you know, I know this is challenging. It's hard for both of us. Let's talk about it. What is particularly challenging for you? And here's where it's challenging for me. Okay, so how do we, again, be solutions oriented or work through that and drive towards a common goal? Ultimately, the common goal is launching this product or making the business successful, or, you know, achieving some revenue goals or targets, or just the broader success of the team. So keeping it away from our own internal and looking to something bigger, a bigger purpose, a bigger mission, a bigger cause. And then finding what motivates that particular person, getting to know them. What exactly is it that they thrive on? What do they love about what they do? And then maybe that's where you can start to work with them and coach them and help them shine in their new role. And actually, I've seen things turn around where, I've seen people become leaders, and there's been a lot of conflict in the beginning and a lot of resentment and pushback. But over time, relationships take time to build. They were one of their biggest supporters. And, I think they're still working together today. So you never know, be open to the journey, but remember, you can only control how you show up, right? Other people are going to have their issues and their challenges. Just meet them where they are, let them know that you're available and open to have those conversations. And they're difficult conversations. You may have to get support from your manager and say, how do I approach this situation? This person is really not seeing eye to eye. Maybe you go for lunch, maybe you take it outside of the office and get to know them on a more personal level and humanize leadership. So it's not this formal thing. In fact, a lot of times when you have one-on-ones, what they say to do is, instead of me sitting behind a desk, let's say, Amod, you're my direct report, and I'm sitting behind this desk in my office, and you come in and you sit right across from me. That can be a little bit of a boundary, right? Or, a little bit of a perceived hierarchy, and it kind of could just paint a different picture or perception. And maybe it's just like, hey, Amod, do you want to go downstairs and grab some coffee for a one-on-one today? Right? So how's your family doing? How's this year been for you? And, really get to know your team and build those relationships. So today, leaders are challenged with so many things, right? As you can imagine, how do we retain our employees and engage them? People are leaving like crazy. You've probably heard of the Great Resignation, and sometimes that's happening in more industries than others. People are looking for flexible environments, maybe working from home. How as a leader or manager, do you manage across global teams, dispersed teams, hybrid teams? How do you be agile and still innovate? There's a lot of change and uncertainty in the pipeline. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are coming to the forefront. Are you really understanding what that means as a leader and doing the work to grow in that area? And understanding what well-being looks like, right? Not just mental well-being, but emotional, maybe even financial well-being, spiritual, whatever it is, well-being in general. What does that look like? And managing your own well-being in the middle of all of this. So how does that make you feel? Now, again, a lot of this is like executive level, upper management, not necessarily if you're like just stepping into manager role, but actually very well a lot of these areas could still impact you very much so. So what do you think is one of the biggest challenges today or forces in the world that could be impacting managers? Anything else that I haven't mentioned? Or any of these, do you think that are sticking points, or like you have a question on, or you've just read a story on, or like, wow, I can't believe that companies are still struggling with this, or any questions? How about Viviana?
Enrique also has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Enrique. Okay, Enrique, you go first.
No worries. Yeah. I think culture is a huge one. I think that if you don't have good culture with your team, that there's always going to be conflict, there's always going to be an issue, or something doesn't get done to the way that's the most effective. So being a part of, a good culture, and I think that's something that a lot of companies don't focus on as much as they should. Sometimes they do. I know personally I have had some work experience for quite some time now, and year after year we had work culture trainings and experiences to help us build culture. And even at that, we were still trying to get there. And knowing that, the day after or a week after the training, we'd be like really good working and, efficient and successful. And then like 6 months later, you're like, wait a second, where did all this go? Right. So I definitely think as a leader, that's something that should be really focused on. And it's difficult too. It's definitely difficult to get that component across.
Yeah. I mean, Enrique, thank you so much for sharing your experience. And so true. Everything Enrique is saying is true. We go through these cultural transformation efforts, maybe a week-long training, or you come in and do an assessment. And then things start to slip because there's no real oversight, management, or continuation, or somebody really like driving the culture. We tend to get back and set in our ways. So it's very difficult to make it stick. And, there's a lot of companies that have beautiful brochures. Our culture is about this. We value recognition. We care about our people. And then you get inside and you said, but how is that being demonstrated through the actual culture of the organization? And each team or department might have its own subculture. So some departments will be like, well, we're in marketing. Everything is awesome here. Well, I'm in IT and it sucks, So to make it pervasive and spread throughout the organization is very, very challenging to do. And so I was going to ask Viviana if you had any thoughts as well. On any of these dimensions. Otherwise, we can continue to move forward. But yes, absolutely. And you as a leader, it starts from the top, right? Culture is something that you live and lead by example. But it's very hard to make it stick, and there's turnover and things constantly changing. So these are the skills that are going to be most needed. And I talked about this in other presentations, right? There's only a few that are truly technical oriented, like systems analysis and evaluation, technology design and use, and of course, technical, like we talked about those IQ skill sets. But a lot of these are also more critical thinking, complex problem solving. And number 11, we're going to talk about emotional intelligence as well. So without self-awareness, it's really hard to be socially aware, right? It starts with understanding ourselves. What are our triggers? What are the things that emotionally set us off? Like when you get really upset and frustrated, and if you can start to really take a step back and reflect on those moments and what those triggers are and learn more about your own temperament, then you can start to take a look around at your team and say, okay, here's what might be going on here, and empathize with them and just be more socially aware when other people show signs of frustration, and be able to catch that early rather than later when somebody comes to you and hands in their resignation or is not happy. It's not a complete shock or surprise. Increase in stress levels, of course, inclusivity. How do you balance being nice and being tough? And we're going to talk about finding your authentic leadership. So you can be nice, right? You can be nice and warm, but when it's time to make critical decisions or somebody is not performing, it's now about being directive and having sharing the facts and saying, here's what I need from you. Again, like when I mentioned I had to fire that individual, they had already been on a performance plan, but if I had come in earlier, I would have probably said to them, here are some things that we've noticed. We want to come up with an action plan to start improving in these areas, and I'm here to support you. I want you to be successful. Okay, so now a lot of times people get promoted and they're still thinking like an individual contributor. They're focusing on their work and they lose sight of the team. And so that's another pitfall. So really being able to, again, take a step back and understand who's on the team, what are they good at, how can they also help and manage and drive the work being done. And some people, again, might not like it, but you might have to step away from your craft for a bit, right? You can't always be in the weeds. But it's, again, you don't want to be so high level and flying high where your team doesn't necessarily respect you and they think that you're kind of too far away from the work, right? So be willing to roll up your sleeves and dive in, but don't just stay focused in the individual contributor mode, because you're now having to make that transition to manager. And so the road to leadership is a winding one. It's a long one. There may be some stops and some U-turns, but just keep going. It can feel daunting at times, but your journey is very unique. Your roadmap is going to look different than the person next to you. So just remember, it's a lifelong journey. Even executives today, that's why there's executive coaching. You would think that a CEO or somebody with like 50 years of work experience should have it figured out by now, but we're human beings, right? We're human beings. We have our own childhood upbringing, our own limiting beliefs, our own traumas and things to deal with that sometimes show up in the workplace. So some, therapy, coaching, all of that is needed no matter what age group you're in or what your background is. Okay, so do you guys know about emotional intelligence? And I can talk about this model here, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. But essentially, and I have a whole different workshop on emotional intelligence, but I want to just summarize it for you here in this model. And again, it's about self versus social. So if you look at the top two, there's recognition and regulation, recognizing your emotions and understanding when they show up, and then being able to regulate them if they start to escalate. On the left side, you've got personal competence. So that's managing yourself, and then social competence, managing others. And you can see where they intersect. So if you're personally competent and you're developing your own leadership skills, your recognition is all about your self-awareness, being able to recognize your emotions. When it comes to social competence, it's empathy for others, right? You already have that self-awareness. That first layer needs to come first. And then under social competence, you can have empathy. When you regulate yourself, that's self-management. And when you regulate others, that's really relationship management. And so emotional intelligence encompasses all of this, starting with yourself, learning how to develop and manage yourself, and then others after that. This isn't interesting. I know a lot of PhDs in the room, so I thought I would throw this fun fact out there. But there have been actually some studies done that show your blood type can indicate and I see Gabriel smiling. Have you heard of this study? Can indicate how you may react to certain emotions, stressors or triggers throughout the day. So who knows their blood type? Anyone here? All right, Gabriel.
Okay.
Which one? Go ahead, Joanne.
I think I saw Piashi raise her hand suddenly, but Gabriel can go first too.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was laughing because I'm a type O, and that's perfectly how very, very straight to the point how I function. I handle stress until the breaking point. Yeah.
Okay, so pretty accurate.
Yeah, I haven't actually heard of this study, but I think it was really funny. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, accurate. Okay,
Same with me. I'm an O, and I think, but the weird thing is, I know O is probably one of the more common blood types. But yeah, I also do that, and I'm hoping to change that. I'm trying to change that, I guess. But then I think I need to change my blood type. So.
No, we don't want to do that. No blood transfusions or stem cell transplants here. Yeah, we need to really think about now. It's just, again, awareness. You know your blood type. You may know your tendencies. Just recognize and normalize it. It's okay. You're human. You know, we're all going to get triggered. We're all going to get upset. We all encounter stress. But what do you do when you encounter stress? And you may have fight, flight, or freeze. By the way, if you guys know about neurology or the brain, the amygdala is the fight or flight response portion of the brain. And a lot of the signals enter through and they hit our emotional sensors before our logic center, right? The prefrontal cortex. So we are going to naturally, a memory or something might come up and we're like, oh my gosh. And you might have the same exact emotion or feeling or reaction towards something that happened years ago. It's just part of our genetic and our biological and physiological makeup. So the key with emotional intelligence is, can you delay that reaction a little bit so that it has a chance to enter your logic mind and you can combine logic and emotion before you react. Like, how many of you guys have ever sent a text off or an email, in frustration and hit send, and a few minutes or a couple of days later, you're like, oh, wait, maybe I shouldn't have reacted so fast. So can you delay that? Now, how do you delay that? It could be through breathing exercises, right? Just taking a nice deep inhale and exhale, that'll lower the stress, or walking away from the situation. Maybe going to vent to a friend, maybe going to the bathroom, have a good cry, like figuring out what works for you, trying out a few things, maybe having one of Joanne's macaroons. I mean, that would cheer anybody up, right? So, okay. So I thought that would be a pretty interesting, fascinating research that's been done there. Okay. So now our next breakout session, I'm just going to keep an eye on the time here. We're going to go into groups of 3 again. And I want you to talk about whether it was at work or in school or at the lab or, whatever you were doing in research, what was your best and worst day? And let's say, what did you do? Like, how did you feel and what did you do when something bad happened? If you guys can remember. You guys ready?
Yeah, we should be all back.
Okay, perfect. All right, Swati, would you like to kick us off? Anything you shared or learned?
Yeah, we were mostly talking about how we react in like in a way that at that particular moment we get stressed and we think about it. Okay, it has gone bad or something. But when we look back to the incident, like after a few days or a few years, we think, okay, it's not that bad. It's okay. I didn't have to react that way. So that was something that we spoke about.
Yes, this time perception, right? Like in the moment, it could feel like the worst thing in the world, but asking yourself, in a year from now, will this matter? How much will this matter? And so that helps to keep perspective. Aline, anything from your group? We've got some folks.
She says her microphone is not working.
Okay. Do you guys want to use the chat as well?
I can share for our group.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. So we kind of talked about how we don't really remember like our best and worst days so much. We don't, and more or less we don't focus on them. But I definitely shared that I think some of the better days is when you have like a planned agenda and all the tasks to accomplish for that time, and you get them done. So I think that's something successful. And then as far as the worst days, something planned or maybe on a bigger scale in advance, yet it doesn't go the way it should be. And the feeling about that is kind of, you're upset, but at the same time, things kind of happen. So,
yeah.
And just roll with the punches.
Yeah. Okay. So roll with the punches. Yeah. So being flexible and open and understanding that things are going to ebb and flow. And then success could be having a planned agenda and kind of mitigating stress by knowing what you're going into your day or week with. I think that's super important. Okay, great shares. All right, so we're going to crank through a few more things, and then I want to again open it up for Q&A, and we got quite a bit more to cover, but I think this is a big one. This is a big topic, right? Even getting offered to be a manager, senior manager, whatever the title is, or stepping into that role, imposter syndrome comes up, and I have mixed feelings about this term in general because I think that a lot of us do have certain cultural or upbringing that, or we've had experiences or trauma or things happen in the workplace where we naturally feel maybe have been marginalized. So it's more than just imposter syndrome coming up, but oftentimes it's things we can work out within ourselves. So I don't know if you guys knew this, but imposter syndrome is very common. It happens to about 70% of people. And actually it happens very often to people that are high achievers and perfectionists. They're the ones that are more likely to feel like, wait a minute, do I deserve to be here? Am I worthy of this position? Am I going to be found out like I'm a fraud and I actually don't know what I'm doing? Because we put so much pressure on yourselves, right? So have you guys heard of the 5 different versions of imposter syndrome? Which one do you think you might be? Okay, so we've got the perfectionist. This person has high expectations. They hate mistakes. The expert, they always want to get certified. They want to know every detail and really be like the subject matter expert in the room. The genius, they don't like it when things don't come easily because they're so used to being like the smartest person in the room. The soloist likes to do things on their own and doesn't like, they don't like to take help from people. And the superhero wants to keep pushing themselves to work harder. They might work until like 2, 3 a.m. in the morning. And they think that, is a sign of great work ethic, but they're actually burning themselves out. So who identifies with what? Go ahead and put it in the chat. I'm going to open that up. Let's see if I missed something. All of them. Perfect. Yes. Soloist. Okay. And how that shows up for you. Yeah. I mean, it's natural if you might tend to jump into a few of these categories. So think about how it could be helping you and hurting you, right? Oftentimes, initially, it might be a shell for it to protect us, but it could be holding you back. And so when you encounter imposter syndrome, a few things you can do is remember your accomplishments, like what got you here, and maybe actually go back and read and reflect on them. Somebody actually gave you some really great feedback. You forgot, or you filed that away. But you deserve to be here, right? Your journey is unique. It might be going a totally different direction than others, but you're not alone. Again, know what's triggering you to get into that imposter syndrome and have those self-doubts. Lean into your support system, and then know your truth. Like, who are you really? What's a more empowering way to look at it than you're not good enough or smart enough? Your truth is that you probably can figure a lot of this out, right? So a lot of times confidence can be mistaken with arrogance, and arrogance is more insecurity, having to brag and show off, whereas confidence oftentimes is just an inner quiet knowing. If you can get to that place and center yourself, practice maybe even mindfulness, which means just being present in the moment and observing. It's an ongoing battle, right? It's never going to go away completely, but if you can learn to live with it and manage it and bring it to light so it doesn't hold so much power over you, that would be the goal. So, who are you as a leader? What is your style of leadership? And maybe you are still figuring that out. And by the way, it's going to evolve over time as you evolve. So it's not set in stone. It's not like you have a style and that's it. But let's talk about a few common styles. And Joanne, you mentioned with Steve Jobs, authoritative. Yeah, he's probably more autocratic as well, but yeah, somewhere in between, right? Those are two common words. So autocratic is that command and control dictatorship, which is pretty much falling away, right? Nowadays, you can't really sustain that level of leadership. People will leave and they demand and expect more from their workplace and workplace culture. Authoritative, it's a little bit more forgiving. It's like, okay, you're going to follow what I do and I'm going to explain along the way. That's very common, especially at the executive level. Democratic is inviting others, asking for their opinion. Laissez-faire is like, okay, hands off, you go do what you go do. And sometimes that, there's pros and cons to every style. That one could mean being a little bit too detached and people may think you don't care enough, but other people might love it and say, my boss is awesome. I just go do my work and they leave me alone. Collaborative, inclusive of everybody, wanting harmony on the team, and then coaching, which is talking to people and saying, okay, how do we really get you to uncover your strengths, your potential, and inspire you? And you might have a blend of these, or you might have your own. So what do you guys think? What kind of leader do you like to have? What do you think your style is, and what do you like to have? Let's see, how about Alexa? Adriana. I haven't heard from you in a little bit.
I'm sorry, what do I prefer?
That's okay. Oh, the question is, which one of these, do you prefer, or do you think you would be more of?
I feel like
Okay, I think we might be having a hard time hearing, but that's okay. That's totally fine. You feel free to type in the chat. Did you guys catch that? Anyone catch that? If you don't mind typing in the chat, and then anyone else want to also put in the chat. How about you, Alexa? Anything from your perspective? Which one do you think you resonate the most with?
Alexa had typed collaborative in chat.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for keeping up with the chat with me. Okay, perfect. So collaborative. And again, go back and revisit your values. If you care about family, curiosity, community, that will resonate with you, that style. If you're more harmony, compassion, maybe it's more of the collaborative style, right? If you prefer autonomy, it's maybe the more laissez-faire is kind of makes it sound like you don't care, but or lazier, but it's not. It's just you're more laid back and relaxed. Okay, so to find your authentic leadership, it's really about lining up what you do, what you feel internally, and how you show up externally, right? So this is a great quote. You're not afraid to show emotion and vulnerability while you're challenged with the team, while you're facing challenges. But also it's all about lining up. Again, people can tell when you're not authentic. Have you ever met somebody and you felt like something's not quite right? They don't seem that genuine. It's maybe what they're expressing verbally is not matching their body language, or their actions are not matching their words. So find your authentic leadership. You don't have to copy and be somebody else. Like, you guys know the Theranos case, right? She was wearing turtlenecks like Steve Jobs and emulating him and, wanting to get that same level of respect. But you have to find who you are authentically. Maybe she's not the best example, but of a great leader. But that just goes to show, if you're trying to be somebody else, people will eventually find out you're somebody else entirely. Okay. Time and stress. Speaking of, let me just do a quick time check. We've got a couple more minutes, Joanne, before we break into Q&A.
Yes.
Okay, so time management, energy management, stress management, they're all kind of related, right? If you're not managing your time well, you get more stressed out. If you get more stressed out, you don't have enough energy to give. And energy is really, it could be your physical energy, it could be your mental energy. So, a quick exercise I want you guys to do, and you don't have to do this right now. Maybe it's a little homework assignment, but do an audit of your week. What does your next week look like? What are all the activities on your calendar in the morning all the way through the evening? And I want you to map it out. What are these are okay. The emojis are, you can use words too, but when were you really tired and drained? When were you kind of maybe confused or stressed out? That's a little, funny emoji face. And when were you on fire? You're like, I'm rocking right now. I am super productive. I'm just cranking at work. And you're going to find patterns in your day. Maybe your peak productivity time is between, 2 and 4, or it's Friday mornings, So once you start to understand your rhythm and your productivity levels, you can start to create your day in a more meaningful and strategic way and plan out your activities. So maybe you're checking email first thing in the morning, or maybe that's later in the day. Maybe you plan to meet with your team, before lunch or after lunch. So this can help you optimize your schedule so you're more efficient, you're showing up better. Have you guys done any of this, or do you guys know what your productivity hours look like? I'm going to pop in the chat to see if I'm missing anything. Tuesday, Thursday are stress days. Monday, Wednesday afternoon recovery. Wow. What about Tuesday and Thursday is causing you stress, Enrique?
Emotional. I just have a super busy schedule those days.
Okay.
And it's between class and meetings and stuff. And it's not very convenient as like we were used to a lot of like Zoom meetings. Now it's like in person and then Zoom, and then we're meeting in person, or are we on Zoom? So there's a lot of things and assignments that need to get done those times. So that's kind of where I'm focusing a lot of my days. It's like, all right, I got to make sure I get all my tasks done. But then Monday and Wednesday afternoons are the days like in between that I can kind of make sure and set up for those days. So I try to be proactive, hopefully. So
yeah, so it sounds like you found those gaps or those moments where you can take advantage of to tee up for the next day. But it's a lot, right? Zoom calls and in person and a Saturday Zoom too, guys. This is awesome that you're here, but I mean, it's a lot. So make sure you're managing your energy and your stress. And then think about, what are those time wasters? Maybe I can tell you my phone, right? Anytime it dings, I'm just picking it up. And every interruption, by the way, takes another 5 to 10 minutes to get back on track and focused again. So think about the activities you're spending the most time doing. Are there ways to potentially delegate or offset that work or share the workload? Where are you potentially losing time? And how do you stay more organized? So have you guys seen this matrix? Urgency versus importance matrix. And the key is wanting to focus on the top two. So what's really urgent and important. And those are things that are like, oh my gosh, we're launching this project tomorrow. We've got to focus on it. Important but not urgent means there's a project deadline coming up. It's going to get urgent if I don't plan for it right now. So I think I need to, schedule that in. And then the bottom two can sometimes be a little bit confusing to understand, but urgent but not important means maybe some interruptions, a team member's coming in with, and oh my gosh, I need help with this. It might be urgent, but how critical is it really? Is it something that you can help them be self-sufficient and ask them, well, what do you think? And then obviously not an urgent and not important are things like, just busy tasks or checking social media, maybe throughout the day. We want to think about deprioritizing those things. And again, these are just things you play with and try to optimize so that you can have the energy back to yourself. Again, knowing who to delegate to, what and why. It's not just to get stuff off your plate. It's hopefully to also develop somebody and to give yourself some bandwidth for more strategic work. Making sure you're setting up those SMART goals for yourself and your team, right? Specific, measurable, but also meaningful, attainable or achievable, realistic, and time bound. So an example of that, and I'd like for you guys to practice that today. What's one thing you can do going forward after our time today? Come up with one SMART goal for yourself that's specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time bound. So as an example, by the end of next week, I want to do an audit of my calendar and understand my productivity. Or in the next 2 weeks, I'm going to track my emotional triggers and see if there's any patterns in what's getting me frustrated. Okay, so let's take a moment to do that and feel free to share, think about what you want to do going forward to be a better leader and to step into whether it's a manager role or just managing yourself in your time better. Give you guys a minute for that. And I think, Joanne, how are we on time? Do you want to open it up now? We've got a few minutes.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear some responses to the
goals,
obtainable goal this coming week or next week. And then we can go ahead and wrap up within the last 5 minutes of questions.
All right, I'm going to stop share for a second here so I can see all your lovely faces on the screen. And anyone want to talk about potentially what they could do differently, how they could manage a little bit better, manage themselves better, manage conflict better? Conflict is all about also just staying calm and knowing when to step in, especially if there's conflict between team members. Can you bring those people together, focus more on the facts than opinions, and not take sides? Again, remembering that conflict can be productive if you're solutions oriented. Okay, I'm going to jump into the chat again and see. Let's go around the shoehorn here. Is that the right term? I never quite understood that. Okay, so let's start. Joanne, how about you? Any key takeaway or goal?
Yeah, so definitely for me, one thing I haven't done recently is to ask my undergrads what they think of me and how I can do better. And that's something that I want to address this week. We have a Wednesday meeting and they will be asked, and I will get their feedback.
Wow, that's very great. That's powerful. Okay, thank you. Gabriel, I'm just going to go on my screen here and down the list. Gabriel, you're next on my screen.
Yeah, one thing that I haven't actually done is having that mental reset every week. It's just, finals are creeping up and group projects are starting to be due. And it's like, I'm getting the work done, but at what cost? And I think a good schedule audit goes a long way. Figuring out the times where, you can fit in like 10 minutes of work and 30 minutes of work. And, to some people, 10 minutes be like, oh, that's not a lot of time. Like, that's a lot of time. You only have 24 hours in a day. So
yeah, so important.
Yeah.
Okay, mental reset. Now think about, as we're going around the room, think about what that means for you. What does that look like? Is it just a nap? Is it, a mini vacation? What is it that you want to specifically try to do for your mental reset? Adriana. And feel free to type in the chat if that's easier.
It's still kind of hard.
Okay, so you can put yours in the chat and we'll go to Amode. We'll come back to you,
think,
Gabriel, for your specific one, but I'll give you a minute. Amode, go ahead.
Yeah, right now, sort of working through the beginning of a couple group projects for school, and I think one thing I want to get done for in the next week or two is just checking in with everybody, making sure that like how they're doing and if the way we're working works for everyone, things that we can do better to try to get our work done in a more timely fashion and like at a time that's not super late.
Fantastic, Amode, and I love that. And there's actually something that I like to use a lot. It's called what's working, what's not, what's better, and everybody kind of share. So it's not just a list of things that are going wrong, but also recognizing and celebrating what's going well, and then what can be improved. So that's fantastic. Okay, Piyashi.
There are a couple of things that I want to do in the next 2 weeks, but first is like just to organize. I think for me, mental reset means, planning everything out. And even though most of my plans don't, like, I don't follow through with all of them, but I like having everything in front of me. So I'm going to just plan everything out and see what needs to be done and, like, do the time stuff. And I also want to kind of give specific goals and to the undergrads that I'm working with, I feel like I've not been doing with that. And another one is that I actually work with another grad student, and we lead the undergrads together. And I feel like often I'm being overshadowed. Like I cannot get my style through because his style, like he has a tendency to overtake whenever I'm saying it. It's not intentional. It's just something.
Personality.
Yeah, and so I think and what happens is I like leading, but if somebody's going to come, I kind of take a step back always. So I'm not a person who will, just fight for leadership. So I feel like maybe I'm going to have a talk with him and sort that out. I need to figure out how to do that, but I'm probably gonna have to figure that out because it's not gonna work in the longer run. Yep.
Right. That takes a lot of courage. So these are great things, planning it out, having specific goals for the undergrads, having that conversation with them as well as your peer to figure out how can we, maybe it's just a question. How do you think things are going? How do you think we can work better together? Here are some of, my observations or my goals. I would like to maybe think about stepping in or stepping up in some ways when, let's figure out how do we divide that up? When it would be appropriate for me? Let's look at everything that we have going on. Here's kind of the section I think maybe I could lead. What section do you want to lead? So it's kind of like a partnership, right? And you guys are, it sounds like, partnering well together. It's just now you vocalizing and verbalizing your needs. Yeah, great. Fantastic. Okay. Aline put in the chat. Okay. And I see Adriana as well. Oops, who did I miss? Okay. So planning out. Yep. Scheduling time in your planner to relax and take time for yourself. Perfect. And I'll follow that up with a question that you can think about is when do you want to do that? It's like actually thinking about doing that tomorrow or Monday or, so that you have something to do. But that's fantastic. It's so important to actually schedule that relaxation time. Otherwise our calendars get hijacked, right? Or we just deprioritize it. Adriana, you want to do better, recognize and individually connect with the newer members in your Frisbee team. Wow, that's a great idea. Speak with your manager about pursuing a change in role and expectation. Oh my gosh, these are great. I would love to dive further into those. Those sound very, very meaningful. Okay. Enrique, you're up.
Yeah, I would just say my goal probably, especially like with how I've been working in my project so far, is to really focus on being organized with my teams and our schedules, because right now there's a lot of like, we scheduled the meet and then are we really going to meet this day? And is it, people don't show up or, and it's across more or less some of the projects that I'm not a lead in, and making sure that I can, dedicate time to help out and try to make sure that we're all meeting, as well as the team that I am part of a lead on, like really making sure that we have something laid out that way everyone can be a part of it, and kind of scheduling and, managing those schedule conflicts is really hard with a big group. So really
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Being more organized and scheduling all that, sitting down and really planning and thinking through how it's all going to tie together. So that's a big feat, but I have no doubt you're going to be able to do that and do a fantastic job at that. Just carving out that time is the key part to getting that going. And how about you, Swati? And we'll wrap up because I think that's Swati, and then we'll wrap up with any final Q&A before we head out. Go ahead, Swati.
Yeah, so we're starting a new project, and I'm just hoping to set attainable goals for everybody. I'm I'm a manager in this, so it's like opposite of what I told before. But yeah, so it's just set attainable goals and make sure everybody's involved and planning everything. So to accommodate everybody, I think that would be a good start for me.
Okay. Perfect. So the SMART goals, sitting down and doing that actually with people and getting people understanding what's expected of them so that they can also lead the way and become better and improve. And so, okay, this was awesome. I know we're a little bit past our time, but I can still stay on for a couple of minutes. You guys have been awesome. Thank you so much for all your participation. Again, this is a lot to cover in a 90-minute session, the journey from individual contributor to manager and just leadership in general. So there's a lot of topics, but hopefully you got some good insights and sounds like some good goals set for yourself. So what else can I help you with? Any final questions from the group? Any thoughts? You've all done a great job sharing. Thank you so much. I know we got to head out and speaking of time management, right? Make the most of your weekend and Saturday. But thank you so much, Joanne. Thank you. Any final thoughts from you? Oh, emotional intelligence. Yes, yes.
Yes. So why don't I go ahead and wrap
That's
us
a good
up here,
segue.
and then yeah, you can stay on the call if you want to continue your conversation, Adriana, to address your question. But thank you so much, Manisha, for your time. Really appreciate having you here. I'll be sending out a follow-up email with your email so everyone has your contact and can talk with you more if they need to. So I'm just going to go ahead and end the recording here.